Okay, so today we're going to talk about slopes and like y-intercepts. So first we're going to change nice slopes to fractions. And slopes are always attached to the x. And slopes were previously called common difference. Therefore, the math for slopes is adding or subtracting, okay? So slopes are always attached to the x because that's what a common difference does too. So our number attached to the x is this 2, so my slope is a 2. To write it as a fraction, I put it as 2 over 1, okay? Every time, if you got a nice slope like this, you gotta change it to a fraction, it's gonna be put over a 1. Next one we have -3, so my slope is -3 because that's what's attached to the x there. So I have -3 over 1. All right. The next bit is we're going to identify slope movements on a graph. We're going to write all the slopes in a fraction. Slope movements are up or down, right and left. Now, it's up if it's positive, it's right if it's positive, it's down if it's negative, it's left if it's negative. Okay, those are slope movements. Now, y-intercepts are like our start number at time 0, and you got to include the sign in front. It's the number that's not with the x. So, in this one, my slope is 2, but I rewrite that as 2 over 1, okay? And when I do that, this 2 is positive, so I'm gonna go up, and this 1 is positive, so I'd go right. My y-intercept in this problem is going to be this -1. In the next problem here, we have -3 as our y-intercept. That's what's attached to the x, so I write -3. But when I write that as a fraction, it's going to be -3 over 1. The movement for that, if it's -3 here, that means it's going to go down. And if it's a +1 here, that means we're going to go right. And then my y-intercept is this 1 that's by itself, and it's a +1, so I'm just going to put +1 there. In number 7 here, it's already written as a fraction, so that's really nice. So our slope is 1 over 2, because that's what's attached to the x. This 1 is positive, so I'm going to go up. This 2 is positive, so I'm going to go to the right. My y-intercept is that -3. Remember the sign. So my y-intercept is a -3. In number 8 here, my slope is -2 over 3. That's what's attached to the x. So when I write it, I'm going to write it how I say it. So if I say -2 over 3, I'm going to write -2 over 3. If we have one negative, we should continue to only have one negative. Now I have a -2 at the top of my fraction, so that means I'm going to go down. And then I have a +3 at the bottom of my fraction, so that means I'm going to go to the right. My y-intercept is this +4. Okay. So again, these are your movements depending on your sign. So now we're going to find slopes and y-intercepts from tables and graphs. So y-intercepts are with x at 0, and then the slope on the table, you do your y math on top, your x math on the bottom, and remember we're only going to be adding or subtracting. So let's always find our y-intercept first. It's always the easiest. So here's x at 0, so my y-intercept is going to be 5, okay? So again, this is your y-intercept. Now let's look at our math. Our math for our y's, so we go from 5 to 6 to 7, so that's adding 1. So that means I'm going to have a 1 at the top of my fraction because it's on the y side. Y math is on top. Then we have 0 to 4, so the math that's happening from 0 to 2 to 4 is we're adding by 2. So the bottom of my fraction is going to be a +2 because x math is at the bottom. All right, in the next problem, again, I'm going to start with my y-intercept. So I find x at 0, so here's my x, here's 0, so my y-intercept is 3. Now I figure out the math I'm doing as I go down my table. So I'm going to start with my y math. So on this side, I go 7 to 5 to 3, so that's subtracting 2. So I have a -2 at the top of my fraction. On the x side, we go from -2 to -1 to 0, so that's adding 1. So we have a 1 at the bottom of my fraction. And I can rewrite this as -2, okay? So you can rewrite it if you need to. If you leave it this way, that's okay. If you rewrite it, that's actually very nice. So it's like going backwards. It's like going from here to here. All right, number 17 is a little bit of a different table, but it's still the same concept. So here's my x at time 0. So that y partner is 5, and 5 is my boyfriend. And then we figure out our y math. So on the y side, we are adding by 3. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. So we are adding by 3. So I have a 3 up top. And then my x math is adding 1. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. So we have 3 over 1. But I can rewrite this as a 3. So our y-intercepts are on the y-axis. So y-intercepts you find on these up and down y-axes. This is how you do your slope, right? If it's positive, if you're going up, negative if you're going down, positive if you're going right, negative if you're going left. And you read graphs from left to right. So let's first, figure out our y-intercept. All right, so here's my y-axis, and here's my first dot. And that is at a 1. Then I figure out my movement. So I'm gonna zoom in, left to right. So I go up 2, so that means I have a positive 2 at the top of my fraction. And then I'm going right 1, and right is a positive thing, so that's the bottom of my fraction. And I can change that to just a 2, or you can leave it as 2 over 1. That's fine. Next one, and I'm sure some of you are like, gonna have a weird question, and I'm ready for it. So y-axis, here's my y-intercept. That is a -2. Now in this one, I'm gonna go left to right. Now first, I went up and then right. So let's see what happens if I do going to the right first. So if I go to the right, I went to the right 3. That's fine, because you still have the right answer going positive 3. And then if you go up, that's fine too. That's up 2 here, so that means I have a positive 2, and that's going to be my fraction, okay? All right, so let's look at 21. So 21, we look at the y-intercept, so it's right here. That's 0. And then let's look at our graph. And again, we got to go this way. So I'm going to go down 1, so that means I'm going to have a -1 at the top of my fraction. And then I'm going to go right 3. That's a positive thing. So that's my slope. Okay? All right, that's the end of this video. Go ahead and do your exit ticket. Don't forget to do your do now and homework.